Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're evaluating the 2024 season of one of the most dominant relievers in all of baseball. Jeffrey Hoffman, you're up for your evaluation.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me for some of my other work in the sports talk space here in Philadelphia. I've been on the radio at 97.5 The Fanatic, talking Philly sports for 5 years now. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons now, and this is my 3rd season also as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. That all stuff really helps us out. It also gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free. It's easy. It's a great way to say that you enjoy the content. So I appreciate everyone who's done that and everyone who's going to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we're talking Jeffrey Hoffman today, and he had an absolutely outstanding 2024 season, like unbelievable. Even if you were the biggest Jeff Hoffman fan, you didn't see this coming. Nobody saw this coming. We knew he was good last year, but what he was this year was just a whole nother level. So we're going to break down what he did in 2024. Then we're going to talk about why he's probably done ever pitching for the Philadelphia Phillies again. And we're going to round out today's episode with something really interesting psychologically that I think the Philadelphia Phillies front office may have wrong, and it may be Jeff Hoffman's fault. I'll explain that later. But let's start with the evaluation of Jeff Hoffman based on his 2024 season. First of all, he was a lock all-star. There was no doubt he should have been. He was unbelievable. Listen to these numbers, man. Like a 2.0 WAR as a reliever, a 2.17 ERA, just lights out. I mean, 3-3 win-loss record, whatever. You don't really care about win-loss record. But that 2.17 ERA, like last year he had a 2.41 in 52 1/3 innings. And you're like, okay, that is easily the best season of his career. Incredible that he had that in 2023. That's great. Can you really expect him to do it again? And then guess what? He drops it by like almost 3.3 points on the ERA in 2024. Like, that's insane. That doesn't happen. I don't know what they found in Jeff Hoffman. I don't know how they found it, but this dude went from who is he to how is he even hittable? Because he wasn't for a lot of this year. 66 1/3 innings pitched, only 16 earned runs, 6 home runs allowed, which, I mean, not great, but that happens. What are you going to do, especially when you throw with the velocity that he throws? The whip, 0.965. You know what's funny? He actually had a better whip in 2023. So that went up a little bit. Part of the reasoning is just he was around the strike zone more. He gave up 48 hits this year, 29 last year. So he kept guys off base, but he worked out of danger a lot more in 2024. And you might say, oh, well, that might have given you indication that the postseason wasn't going to go as well. No, like the postseason was an anomaly. It was a bad series. It doesn't make him a bad reliever. Like Jeff Hoffman was everything you could have ever wanted from a high leverage righty reliever this past year. I can't say enough good things about him. He did everything well. He spotted his pitches well. He had his stuff working all season. And the cool thing, we're going to do Matt Strom's evaluation at some point. I'm just kind of rolling through the bullpen willy-nilly. So it's whoever strikes me on a given day that I'd like to talk about today. It happened to be Jeff Hoffman. But him and Matt Strom are throwing partners. And there was a great article that came out like halfway through the season in The Athletic, penned by the one and only Matt Gelb, who does great work. If you have an Athletic subscription, read Matt Gelb's work on the Phillies. If you don't, get an Athletic subscription and then read Matt Gelb's work on the Phillies. He does awesome stuff, even in the offseason. But it talked about how Matt Strom and Jeff Hoffman were throwing partners and how they feed off each other and how they build this confidence in each other. And they were the 2 all-star relievers for this Philadelphia Phillies squad. And it's crazy to see what the mentality of a team believing in you can do. Jeff Hoffman went from a run-of-the-mill, bottom half of the league pitching guy that nobody really knows about to being discovered by Bryce Harper in the offseason last year and saying, or not even in the offseason, like early on in the season, saying, hey, This guy should be pitching at the major league level. And then having an outstanding year to then going ahead and getting an all-star nod this past year, very, very deserved, and was probably pretty close to being an all-MLB second team selection in the bullpen. Definitely was up there as far as nomination is concerned. Now, not first team, not second team, but still in consideration, which he absolutely should have been. He was a reliever for the National League All-Star team, as was Matt Strahm. What do you want me to say? Like, I know what happened in the postseason. I know he absolutely was terrible in that series against the Mets, but that stuff happened. It sucks, but it's just like, you know how Bryce Harper went cold in the NLCS in 23? Like, and that doesn't mean Bryce Harper stinks. It means he got cold at a really bad time, and that sucks for the Phillies. Jeff Hoffman giving up runs and not being able to get outs in the 2024 NLDS against the Mets doesn't mean he stinks. Doesn't mean the Phillies shouldn't look to pay him. Doesn't mean that he's washed and he should be out of base. No, like the bigger sample size is the 66 and a third innings that he threw in the regular season this past year. And he was really, really good. Now, you might bring up like, oh, well, the postseason matters more. He was pretty solid in the postseason in 2023 when he got his opportunities. And this year it just wasn't the case. And it sucks that we're going to talk about that maybe being the last time he ever pitches in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform is the last time he pitched in the NLDS. But I don't want to evaluate his full season based on just the postseason, but it does have to be part of the conversation. So compared to expectations, what would you give Jeff Hoffman as far as a letter grade? You know what? I think I've got to hand out another A+. I think I do. And people will say, well, what he did in the postseason. I get it. But this was a guy that came out of nowhere to give you a 2.4 and change ERA last year. And we thought that was the year of a lifetime for Jeff Hoffman. No way he'll ever recreate that. No way he'll be able to go out there and one-up that performance. Like, you just caught lightning in a bottle. And lightning doesn't strike twice. Unless lightning's name is Jeff Hoffman. In which case it strikes twice and it strikes harder the second time. Like, by expectations, you should have expected a drop-off for Jeff Hoffman this past season. And what did he do? He became one of the best right-handed relievers in all of baseball. That is an A+ season. I don't care what he did in the postseason. Listen, I understand people not liking certain things about the way Jeff Hoffman goes back. He's around the zone a lot. He gives up hard contact sometimes. Okay, cool. But still, like, postseason aside, which a couple of appearances, he was lights out just about all season long. And that deserves an A+ because you can't expect a guy that you just found on the street to all of a sudden become this elite level reliever. You have to give that guy an A+ for the 2024 season. Now, what do you give him compared to his peers? Let's just give him a regular A, okay? Because there are some guys out there that are next level relievers that are like the Mason Millers of the world, the Emmanuel Clases of the world, where you look at them and say, okay, that is what an elite A+ level reliever looks like. Jeff Hoffman is a tier below those guys. He is. And if he was on that tier, it would probably be easier for the Phillies to make the decision to say, hey, we're going to pay you and we're going to bring you back on this team. But he is, compared to his peers, I can't give him an A+ because he's not that top tier. He's not all MLB. He's not second team all MLB. But he deserves an A as well for that. So, I mean, stellar marks for Jeff Hoffman for the 2024 season. He was arguably their best reliever. And if it wasn't him, it was his throwing partner. I guess this basically leads into me saying we'll evaluate Matt Strahm next. We kind of have to. They go hand in hand with everything. They have since Jeff Hoffman got called up, and they will continue to until Jeff Hoffman is not on the team anymore, which could be soon. But we'll do Matt Strahm tomorrow, and he's going to have more high marks. I can tell you that already. But to credit to Jeff Hoffman, really, just whatever you think about the postseason, whatever you think about the guy, the player, whether you want him back or not, whether you think he's worth the money or not, the story of Jeff Hoffman is always going to be one that you're like, wow, that is why sports are awesome. Just finding a guy, throwing to Bryce Harper during one of his rehab assignments, not even like in the minors. No, like he was selected to throw like simulated at bats to Bryce Harper. And Harper, who is just this larger than life superstar, who shouldn't think twice about Jeff Hoffman throwing him pitches, goes, yo, why is this guy not on the team? And then to take that opportunity and do what he did last year, and then to become an all-star this year, and to just become the guy that the Philadelphia Phillies needed him to be. He was a huge, huge part of their success, a big part of a division-winning team's bullpen. And whatever happens with Jeff Hoffman, the Philadelphia Phillies were better off for having him on the team. And that is something that he should be super proud of for the rest of his career. And that's something that we should respect about him, regardless of how this offseason goes. So I speak so highly of him. I know the organization likes him. Why could he possibly be done, probably be done with his time in Philadelphia? Well, I'll unfortunately explain that to you coming up next as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel, though, because you can get ready to tackle the oncoming NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I told you ahead of the Eagles-Commanders game on Thursday Night Football, I said, hey, look at the Eagles, look at them to cover. I think they're the better team. And they started slow. And you know what you could have done? You could have hopped in on FanDuel. You could have made a live bet and said, oh, wow, the Eagles, they starting slow. The Commanders are up. Can I get Eagles with plus money? Bang, hammer them. They win outright comfortably. That's the way you do it. That's why live bets are so key. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and check out FanDuel.com and never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so why is Jeff Hoffman done? Like, why would you be in a situation where he is not brought back to the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, it's pretty simple, to be honest with you. He's going to be paid, like big time paid. And the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be in a situation where they have to decide, do we pay Carlos Estevez? Do we pay Jeff Hoffman? Do we bring back either of them? Do we bring back both? I don't think they'll bring back both. I wish they would. I wish John Middleton would just say, hey, whatever, we'll go into the billionth luxury tax threshold if we have to. Cut the check to both these guys. That's not realistic because there is a threshold and there is more money that like John Middleton probably wants to spend other places. If you move Alec Boehm, you got to do stuff there. You got to figure out the outfield. Like, for better or for worse, if you lose both those guys, Estevez and Hoffman, out of the bullpen, you still have Strahm. Excuse me. You still have Kirkring. You still have Ruiz. You still have Alvarado. You still have Tanner Banks. You still have a bunch of guys in that bullpen that you're like, okay, we trust them to be good. We don't know if it's going to be that good of as good of a bullpen as what you had, but you still have an all-star in Strahm. You have pieces, right? They were not your whole bullpen. So where can you make concessions? The bullpen is one of them because there's so many opportunities. We're also going to talk coming up about why I think they may be handling it the wrong way. But bottom line is, you're probably not going to pay both of them. Like 99% sure that you're not going to pay both of them. So then you have to see if there's a decision to be made between the two of them, which one is more likely to be re-signable for the Philadelphia Phillies. And it's Carlos Estevez in a landslide. You might say, well, Estevez was traded and he was an all-star multiple times. And obviously he was coveted to the point where the Phillies traded for him and he could get big money relieving too. Like him and Hoffman, not similar pitchers style-wise, but they're like very similar talent level, and their contracts will be rather similar, it appears, based on estimations. But why is Estevez more signable? Because there are reports out there that Jeff Hoffman has been approached by teams looking to acquire his services as a starting pitcher. Yeah, there are people looking to convert him into a starter. And he's done that a time or two in his career. I want to look up the last time that Jeff Hoffman was a starting pitcher. But he has a little bit of starting experience. And we've seen in recent years a couple of relievers get transformed into starters and get to a point where they've done that well enough. He started 16 games in 2017. He started 15 games in 2019, both of those with Colorado. And he started 11 games in 2021 with the Cincinnati Reds. So he has a little bit of starting experience. he's not going to be a starting pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies. He's just not. That's not going to be his position ever because the rotation is so stacked. If he comes here, he's a bullpen arm. And if you're paying him to be a bullpen arm, you're paying him to do one thing. And bullpen arms are less valuable than starters. And if another team values him as a starter, they're going to pay him as a starter, which means he's pricing himself out of the Philadelphia Phillies market. Are you going to pay a guy starter money to be a reliever? Basically, are you guys going to pay someone more to do less? No, you're not going to do that. So if there are really teams out there, and it sounds like there are, that would pay Jeff Hoffman to be a starter, he's not coming back to Philadelphia. And that's what the rumors are. It seems pretty open and shut to me, which sucks. I don't want to take like the emotion out of it of like, this guy was so important to us, and we're always going to think about the 2023 team and the 2024 division winning team and what Jeff Hoffman was and the story and everything. And he was been a good clubhouse guy. And like, yeah, that's fine. I get it. I like Jeff Hoffman. I like him as a person. At times I've gotten to interact with him. I like him as a baseball player and a pitcher. I like his stuff. I like a lot about Jeff Hoffman. But when the nuts and bolts of the situation are laid out on the table, you say, okay, these pieces just don't fit. You're not going to pay him starter money to be a reliever. Other teams are looking to, if you believe the rumors, and there are multiple out there, they're looking to pay him to be a starter. And if they do that, he will not be a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. And I don't understand why you wouldn't do that, right? Like if you're another team and you're well, I guess I do, right? He's good as a bullpen pitcher. So if you're another team and you say, well, I'd like Jeff Hoffman in our bullpen, I get that. And if you're like, I don't want to push the envelope, I want to see him as a bullpen pitcher. That's what he's proven he's good at over the past 2 years in Philadelphia. Let's just stick with what's worked. Okay. But also, if you've seen him have success as a bullpen pitcher and you need a starter and you think, well, maybe I could take a flyer on this guy and pay him a little bit more money, but not true starter money, and get a guy that was an all-star reliever. And if you can stretch him out to be a starter, maybe you can find a diamond in the rough with Jeff Hoffman. So that's why teams want to do it, and I don't blame them at all. And it doesn't make sense for the Phillies to do it. It just doesn't really fit. And honestly, like, this is the fan in me that's going to say this. I already told you I don't blame teams for doing that with Jeff Hoffman or looking to do that with Jeff Hoffman. Ratty move by other teams around baseball to steal Jeff Hoffman from the Phillies and turn him into a starter. Let the guy come back and be a reliever for this team, man. You're killing me. You couldn't just pay him normal reliever money so that we could make an actual decision. You had to price him out of the Phillies market by paying him to play a position or pitch in a position he's not going to do this year. That annoys me. And I can't blame other teams. It's just like, man, whoever came up with that idea to turn him back into a starter or try to turn him back into a starter, I hate you, because I want Jeff Hoffman to be a Philadelphia Philly again. And it doesn't seem likely that he is. So what will Jeff Hoffman's legacy as a Philly be when everything's all said and done and you get that notification? Free agent, right-handed pitcher Jeff Hoffman has agreed to a whatever term deal for whatever amount of money with whatever team. It's going to be a guy that made the most out of his opportunity. And he honestly is going to be one of those stories that coaches across the Delaware Valley and across this area are going to wake up and go tell their little league team or their Babe Ruth team or their high school team or their college team or their minor league team or their major league team. It plays at every level, the lesson of the Jeff Hoffman story, where you say, if you get an opportunity, do not waste it. You never know what can happen. If Jeff Hoffman had just gone out there and plated fastballs to Bryce Harper, he would not be millions and millions of dollars richer and one of the most coveted pitchers in free agency this year, and a guy that made every little bit of his opportunity in Philadelphia and became a guy that we will always root for in the city. I don't think, short of him going to the Mets or the Braves, I think we will always root for Jeffrey Hoffman. And you love to see that for a guy that deserves every bit of what he's gotten and has earned it himself. He was not given opportunities by the Philadelphia Phillies. No, he earned that and was forced into a spot by a guy in Bryce Harper who said he's got to get this chance. So kudos to Jeff Hoffman. And it's a shame that we've probably seen the last of him in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform. And now I'm going to blame Jeff Hoffman for something. And it's not his fault, but he's the reason that I think the Phillies front office may have a little bit of false confidence. We're going to discuss that coming up as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Okay, so you might say, Connor, what are you talking about? False confidence? Blaming Jeff Hoffman? What exactly is this? And it was this very interesting, I forget if it was a report or an actual Dave Dombrowski quote, but the gist of it was, if Jeff Hoffman doesn't come back, if we don't re-sign Carlos Estevez, well, we found Jeff Hoffman out of nowhere. We developed him into the guy that he is. We can do it again. And that is a dangerous way to go about your business. That is not the best way to operate a major league bullpen, I think. What do I mean? Let me break this down a little bit more. So it sounds like the Philadelphia Phillies, part of the reason that they're comfortable with allowing Jeff Hoffman to walk, allowing Carlos Estevez to walk, is because they see Jeff Hoffman as their diamond in the rough. They see him as a guy that they found and they developed and they created into the guy that he is today, which could be true. Like, I don't hear every conversation between Caleb Cotham, the pitching coach for the Phillies, and Jeff Hoffman. I don't see every practice. I don't know the guy he was when he threw to Bryce Harper and was given this opportunity, as opposed to what the Phillies turned him into. I can look at the numbers and say he was definitively significantly better in Philadelphia. And I don't think he just like something clicked overnight, but it certainly seems like that, right? So I don't know the ingredients that go into the Jeff Hoffman secret stuff, right? You remember the Michael's secret stuff from Space Jam in the Gatorade bottle that they had on the sidelines? I don't know what's in Jeffrey's secret stuff when it comes to Hoffman and how he did what he did in Philadelphia. But what I do know is that this story seems improbable to be recreated. A guy that you have on a minor league deal that a star player just happens to face in a rehab setup and just say, hey, he deserves an opportunity. So what? Like, how do you recreate that? You're just going to find guys on minor league contracts in your system and say, we're going to turn you into an all-star? I don't think that happens very often. My gut feeling would be that is not the best way to go about business. And it seems that the Philadelphia Phillies believe that they're capable of doing that. Now, I don't want to say that they're wrong because, again, I don't know how Jeff Hoffman got from what he was to who he has been here in Philadelphia. But to let two all-star relievers potentially walk because you believe you can recreate one, it feels like a dumber version of Moneyball, right? Well, we don't need Giambi. We can recreate him in the aggregate. We've all seen that movie, right? And what Brad Pitt, or rather Billy Beane, tries to do, Brad Pitt playing Billy Beane. Well, I don't see it as a safe way because you're not trying to bring in guys that are that level or major league caliber. I guess it is Moneyball to the T. Like, how do we recreate that? But I don't know. Relievers are finicky. They'll have up years, down years. Sometimes you'll find something with some guy, and then for every Jeff Hoffman, there's a Gregory Soto where you trade for an all-star caliber guy and he absolutely stinks here and you have to ditch him. Like, it's just such a crapshoot to believe that you can give up on a known asset for an unknown one because of the track record that you have of developing guys based on one dude you found. And you didn't even really find. Bryce Harper found. I don't, that worries me a little bit. Now, they could be right? And this could work out. And that may not be the true strategy. I heard something about, like, we believe we can find another Jeff Hoffman. Not like that, but I mean, we found Jeff Hoffman. It's kind of the tone of it. I remember was like, we believe we can do this again. And there will be other Jeff Hoffmans, not that same exact story, but there will be guys that you find that play out over their skis. Listen, Matt Strahm is kind of another one. Ryan Kerkering is definitely another one. He's a guy that came out of nowhere. So I guess there are more data points to show that the Philadelphia Phillies have been capable of finding relievers that are under the radar, that they've turned into great guys over the past couple of seasons. And that's credit to Caleb Cotham, and that's credit to Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fold and Preston Mattingly, who's the new GM but was the head of minor league development. It's credit to the organization as a whole. But I would almost rather you sign the guys that you know are going to be good. But there are other options, right? So we've evaluated Carlos Estevez. We've evaluated Jeff Hoffman. Those were your two big arms and then along with Strom from the 2024 season, but Strom's going to be back. So how do you replace him? One of the names that's been floated around is Devin Williams, who is great for the Milwaukee Brewers and I think would be awesome for the Philadelphia Phillies, but he's going to be expensive. And do you want to pay him all that much money to occupy positions where you had guys that were not on big contracts? Like, that's part of the reason you're letting Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez walk. You know they work here. So why would you spend that money on someone that you don't know if they fit the culture, you don't know if they can pitch in this city, rather than just bringing back other guys? Like, that's the thing. I am always in favor of proven asset in this city. I'm not talking about like trading prospects or anything, but I'm saying proven asset in the city. If you find a guy that can make it work in Philadelphia, you do what you can to keep that guy over an equal player or maybe even a slightly better player from a different situation. But let's say they do trade Alec Bohm. We've talked multiple times, and you can go back to our old episodes. There are multiple in the past like 2 weeks about what would happen if you traded Alec Bohm, how you would go about it, who could you look for as a return. Some people have brought up Devin Williams of the Brewers. Great reliever, top-level guy. Could you move Alec Bohm for him? Sure. I mean, I guess in theory, absolutely, he could be a return for Alec Bohm. So if you do that and you bring him in here, well, then your bullpen looks pretty similar to what you had last season. Remember, Estevez was a bullpen, a trade deadline acquisition. Before that, it was Jeff Hoffman as your main guy on the right side and Matt Strom as your main guy on the left side. Like, Estevez was good for this team, but he was good for this team for like 2 months, a month and a half. And that's no knock on him, but I'm just saying, like, you can exist in a world without Carlos Estevez and Jeff Hoffman if you just bring in one guy to replace both of them. And then you'll have to see what you do at the trade deadline this year and add to the pen and all of that stuff. So it's not like, I don't want you to think this is a dire circumstance, the Phillies bullpen. I don't think they'll stink next year. I don't think that they're going to be in a situation where they take a significant step back. They're probably still going to be top 10 in baseball, maybe even higher than that. That's all you really need them to be. There's no way they could be any worse in the postseason next year if they indeed make the postseason again, like they should, and they get another opportunity like they should. The bullpen, they could be the 15th best bullpen in baseball. They're still probably going to have better NLDS or NLCS, whatever they play in, than the year before. Well, they won't play in the NLCS right off the bat. NLDS or wild card, I should say, than they did this past year. That was a complete implosion of the bullpen. I don't even know how it's possible. So they're going to be better next year in the postseason if they get there, even if Carlos Estevez and Jeff Hoffman walk. And they're still going to be a talented baseball team. Like, it just sucks to have guys that caliber and to be priced out of the market, or not so much priced out of the market, but it's just, it's like, you remember when the Eagles, if you're an Eagles fan, check out Locked On Eagles. Got some great stuff going on over there with the 8-2 Birds. But they won the Super Bowl in 2017, and then, like, everybody got poached. All the free agents you brought in, the coordinators, everybody. Like, that's what happens when you have a talented team like the Phillies had. Second best record in baseball in the regular season. Division winner, 95 games. Postseason runs 3 years in a row. People are going to start poaching guys when they come available in free agency, and that's just the nature of having a good team. You're not going to be able to keep these guys together forever. So it sucks, but that's part of the business. And I just really hope that the Phillies are not in a spot where they say, well, we've been so good at developing bullpen pitchers that we're going to take a long shot and turn them into something. Because if that long shot misses, or if you bring in a couple long shots and they miss, and then your best right-handed reliever is who? A Ryan Kerkering, who's going to be in his second full season as a bullpen pitcher and like still has a lot of growing to do. Your best lefty is going to be Matt Strom, and then after that, it's who? Jose Alvarado, who had a rough year and couldn't find the strike zone at points. Like, he had some good moments, and I'm not knocking Jose Alvarado, but it's just like, while I do still have confidence in the bullpen, you're a miss or two away from being in a slightly concerning spot with the bullpen where it's not like elite anymore. And if you have the false confidence to say we can create another Jeff Hoffman, you can find yourself in that spot really quickly. If you say, hey, we can get away with it with one guy, but we'd like to bring in someone proven to replace the other one, that seems to be a much more prudent approach. And I just don't want the Phillies to get into a spot where they're stiffing themselves a little too much with their ability to develop pitchers. So a cautionary tale, not one that I think we'll have to worry about in the grand scheme of things. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're consuming this in podcast form, and you're subscribing to the YouTube if you're yet to do so. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted, and it's also a great way to help me out. Put a little more money in my pocket. Let me know you like the content. It's free. It's easy. Hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it. We got another special episode. I'm off all weekend because the Eagles are off all weekend. So I'm going to give you a special Sunday episode coming up tomorrow. So I will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.